The wind howled across the plains that night, carrying with it the scent of dust, smoke, and something darker. The riverbank shimmered under the pale light of the moon, and somewhere in the shadows, someone was crying. The rancher, Thomas Hale, had been riding back from town when he first heard it. At first he thought it was the whine of a coyote, or maybe the whistle of the wind. But no, this was different. It was softer, human, broken. He dismounted his horse slowly, boots sinking into the damp earth by the river's edge. He followed the sound, each step pulling him closer until he finally saw her. She was kneeling near the water, wrapped in a torn, dust-covered cloth. Her shoulders trembled under the weight of cold and fear. Her hair, long, tangled, and dark as the midnight river, fell around her face, hiding her eyes. Thomas froze. He had seen women abandoned before. The West was cruel like that. Bandits, outlaws, husbands who didn't care, towns that turned their backs. But something about her felt different. Before he could speak, her head turned slightly. Her voice came out weak, almost begging, "Please, don't undress me here." The words struck him hard. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it, half pleading, half warning. Thomas raised his hands carefully, showing he meant no harm. "Ma'am, I don't aim to hurt you. Just tell me what happened." She shook her head, clutching the cloth tighter around her body. The fabric was stained, dust, dirt, and something darker. "I can't," she whispered. "Not here. Not like this. If they find me again, I'm dead." Thomas's gut tightened. Whoever they were, they had left her in pieces. He crouched down, lowering himself to her level, trying to catch her eyes through the shadows. But she wouldn't meet his gaze. Instead, she whispered again, trembling, "Don't look at me, please. You'll only see shame." The rancher's chest tightened. He wasn't sure if it was anger at whoever had done this, or the strange pull he felt toward this broken stranger. "Ma'am, you ain't got no shame in my eyes," he said softly. "Just tell me what you need. I'll see to it." Her lips trembled. For a moment, Thomas thought she might answer. Instead, she pulled the cloth tighter and turned away, whispering, almost too softly to hear, "You'll regret it if you stay." Thomas glanced over his shoulder. The night was too quiet, too empty, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Or an ambush. He reached for his revolver. That was when he saw it. Fresh tracks in the mud, leading down from the ridge. Boots. At least 3 men, maybe more. They weren't far. The woman gasped as she noticed him looking at the prints. Her eyes finally met his, and in them he saw not only fear, but a warning. "They're coming," she whispered. Thomas tightened his grip on the revolver. He didn't know who she was, what she'd been through, or why she begged him not to see her. But he knew one thing. He couldn't just walk away. The sound of horses echoed from beyond the ridge. Shadows moved in the moonlight. The rancher turned to the woman, his voice steady but urgent. "Stay low. Whatever happens, don't make a sound." Her fingers clutched his arm suddenly, surprisingly strong despite her trembling. Her lips pressed close to his ear, and she whispered again, "Please, if they catch me like this, it'll be worse than death." Thomas swallowed hard. His mind raced. What kind of secret was she hiding beneath that cloth? What truth was she so desperate to keep covered? But there was no more time. The riders were here, and the night was about to bleed. End of Chapter 1. To be continued in Chapter 2. Do you want me to continue with Chapter 2, approximately 900 words, right away, keeping the same suspense, plus seductive undertone? Or would you like me to first outline the full 5-chapter arc, so you know how the whole story will unfold before I write the rest? You said, continue. ChatGPT said, perfect. Let's dive into Chapter 2 and carry the suspense forward. We'll keep the tension sharp, the narration simple and gripping, and build more mystery around the woman's secret. Chapter 2, Riders in the Dark, approximately 900 words. The horses thundered down the ridge, their hooves striking the earth like war drums. Thomas crouched lower, his revolver already drawn, his body tensed for the fight he knew was coming. Beside him, the woman clutched the cloth tighter around her body. Her eyes darted toward the approaching riders, then back to Thomas, as if silently begging him to do what she couldn't say out loud. "Stay here," he whispered, though he knew she wouldn't be safe anywhere. The riders broke through the shadows, 3 of them. Their faces were half hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats, guns hanging loose at their sides. The leader, a tall man with a jagged scar across his cheek, leaned forward in his saddle. His voice carried over the river like a blade cutting the silence. "You there, rancher," he barked. "Hand her over. She don't belong to you." Thomas didn't flinch. He stood slowly, revolver steady in his hand, his boots firm in the mud. "She don't belong to anyone," he said flatly. The scarred man chuckled, a sound that made the woman beside Thomas shiver. "That's where you're wrong. She's ours. Paid for, fair and square. Now move aside before you find yourself 6 feet under." The woman's grip on Thomas's sleeve tightened. He glanced down. Her lips were trembling, her voice barely a breath. "Please, don't let them take me. I can't go back." Thomas's chest tightened. He didn't know her name, her story, or what lay beneath that torn cloth. But he knew one thing. He'd never hand her over to men like these. "You're gonna have to take me first," he growled. The riders exchanged a look. One of them spat into the dirt. "So be it." The first shot rang out, shattering the night. The woman screamed, ducking low as the bullet whistled past. Thomas dropped to one knee, fired back, and one rider toppled from his horse into the river. The animal screamed, rearing up, and bolted into the darkness. "Damn you!" the scarred leader shouted, firing again. The bullet tore through Thomas's sleeve, grazing his arm. Pain burned, but he didn't falter. He fired once more, missed. The third rider spurred his horse forward, swinging a lasso. The rope snapped through the air, aiming for Thomas but missed and tangled in a tree branch. The distraction was enough. Thomas raised his revolver and fired. The rider spun in his saddle, then tumbled to the ground with a sickening thud. The scarred man cursed, pulling his horse hard. His eyes burned with fury as he pointed at the woman. "We'll get her back. You can't hide her forever." Then, with a yank of the reins, he disappeared into the night, the sound of his horse fading into the hills. Silence returned. Heavy, broken silence. Thomas exhaled slowly, his revolver still smoking in his hand. His heart pounded like thunder in his chest. He turned to the woman. She was staring at him wide-eyed, her breath coming in sharp gasps. "You killed them," she whispered, half in shock, half in awe. "I saved you," he corrected, for now. Her lips trembled. She looked down at the dirt, then back up at him. Slowly, hesitantly, she spoke the words that made his skin prickle. "You shouldn't have. You don't know what I am." Thomas frowned. "Then tell me. Who are you?" She shook her head violently, clutching the cloth tighter. "No. If you knew, you'd run. You'd leave me here to die like the rest." Her words cut deep, but Thomas stood firm. He holstered his revolver, walked closer, and knelt before her. He lowered his voice, steady but soft. "I ain't the rest. Whatever secret you're holding, it ain't enough to scare me off. Not tonight." For the first time, her eyes met his fully. They were a piercing shade of green, glinting even in the pale moonlight. There was sorrow in them, yes, but also a strange spark. Something alive, something dangerous. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but then froze. Her gaze flicked over his shoulder. Thomas turned sharply, revolver back in hand. The ridge was quiet again, but he saw it, a flicker, a shadow moving against the stars. The scarred man hadn't left. He was watching, waiting. Thomas cursed under his breath. They weren't safe here. "We've got to move," he said. "Now." The woman hesitated. "But where?" "Anywhere but here," he cut in. He reached out, offering his hand. For a long moment, she stared at it, torn between fear and trust. Then, slowly, She placed her trembling fingers in his. As he helped her to her feet, the cloth slipped slightly from her shoulder. Thomas caught a glimpse of the skin beneath, bruised, scarred, but beautiful. His breath caught in his chest. She pulled the cloth back quickly, eyes burning with shame. "Don't look," she whispered. "Please." Thomas turned his gaze away, guilt gnawing at him. But inside, he couldn't shake the feeling. Whatever secret she was hiding under that cloth was the reason men were ready to kill for her. And now, it was his burden too. The wind howled again, carrying the echo of distant hooves. The scarred man wasn't finished. Not yet. Thomas tightened his grip on the woman's hand. "This ain't over," he muttered, and deep down, he knew. The night had only just begun. End of Chapter 2. To be continued in Chapter 3. Do you want me to continue straight into Chapter 3, approximately 900 words? Or would you like me to outline the rest of the story arc for Chapters 3 to 5 before I write them, so you know the build-up and final twist? You said, continue. ChatGPT said, all right, let's roll into Chapter 3. This chapter will deepen the bond between Thomas and the mysterious woman, build more seductive tension, and reveal a piece of her secret while keeping the danger close. Chapter 3. The Woman's Secret. Approximately 900 words. They moved quickly along the riverbank, the moon casting long shadows that danced like ghosts in the water. Thomas led the way, his revolver never far from his hand, while the woman stumbled behind, clutching the cloth tighter around her trembling body. Every few steps she glanced over her shoulder, as though expecting the scarred man to appear out of the darkness. "You're safe," Thomas said, trying to reassure her. But even he didn't believe it. After a while, he found an abandoned barn on the edge of a meadow. Its roof sagged, its doors half broken, but it was shelter. Thomas pushed the doors open, checked inside, then nodded. "We'll rest here, just for tonight." The woman hesitated at the doorway, her green eyes flickering with something. Fear, shame, or perhaps both. "I can't stay long," she whispered. "If they find me here, they'll kill you too." Thomas leaned against a wooden beam, folding his arms. "They already tried. Didn't work out too well for them." She looked at him, surprised by his calm. "You're not afraid?" Thomas shook his head. "Fear don't change nothing. Truth does. So tell me, what's your name?" For a long moment, silence filled the barn. Then, softly, she spoke. "Clara." The name carried weight, like it had been hidden for far too long. Thomas repeated it quietly, as if testing it on his tongue. "Clara. Why are they after you?" Her eyes filled with tears. She sank down onto a pile of hay, hugging her knees beneath the cloth. "Because I'm not what I seem." Thomas frowned, kneeling in front of her. "What do you mean?" She lowered her head. "They think I belong to them, that my body is theirs to sell, to own, to use." Her voice broke, trembling like glass about to shatter. "And if you saw what's underneath this cloth, you'd believe them too." Thomas felt his jaw tighten, anger surging in his chest. He had seen too many men treat women like property, like cattle to be branded and sold. But hearing Clara's words stirred something deeper. "You ain't property," he said firmly. "Not to them. Not to anyone." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "Then why do you look at me like that?" The question hit hard. Thomas drew back slightly, ashamed. It was true. He had looked. That brief slip of her cloth by the river still burned in his memory. The bruises, the scars, and beneath them, the undeniable beauty she tried so hard to hide. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I wasn't staring. I was just seeing." Clara tilted her head, studying him. "Most men see only what they want. I ain't most men." For a moment, the barn went silent, except for the whistle of wind through the cracks in the wood. Their eyes locked, and Thomas felt something shift, an unspoken trust beginning to form. But then Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, don't ask me to show you. Not yet." Thomas nodded slowly. "When you're ready, not before." Relief flickered across her face. She tightened the cloth around her shoulders and leaned back against the hay. For the first time, she seemed to breathe a little easier. Outside, an owl hooted. The night stretched long, heavy with the weight of secrets. Thomas sat near the door, revolver across his lap, eyes scanning the darkness beyond. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Clara. Who was she, really? Why did the scarred man call her paid for? And what was she hiding beneath that ragged cloth that filled her with so much shame? At last, her soft voice broke the silence. "Do you believe in curses, Thomas?" He looked over, frowning. "Curses?" She nodded. "The men who owned me, they said I was cursed, that my body brought ruin to anyone who touched me. They used it as an excuse to do things, to make me feel less than human." Thomas's hand clenched around the revolver. "That's not a curse, Clara. That's cruelty." She met his gaze again, and for the first time he saw something new in her eyes. Hope. "You don't believe them?" she asked. "Not for a damn second," he said firmly. Her lips quivered, as though she wanted to smile but couldn't quite manage it. Instead, she whispered, "Then maybe you're the only man alive who doesn't." Thomas shifted closer, lowering his voice. "Clara, listen to me. Whatever you're hiding, whatever scars you carry, it don't make you cursed. It makes you strong for surviving." Her breath hitched, and for a moment she looked like she might break down completely. But then she whispered words that sent a chill down his spine. "You say that now, but when you see what's beneath this cloth, you'll freeze like the rest." This maid said. Thomas leaned back slightly, his pulse quickening. The way she said it, the certainty in her voice, told him this wasn't just fear. It was something real. Something dark. Before he could answer, a sound outside made him stiffen. The crunch of boots on dry grass. Clara's eyes widened in terror. She clutched the cloth tighter. "They found us." Thomas raised his revolver, every muscle tensed. He moved to the barn door, peering through a crack. There, shadows moving in the meadow, at least 2 men, maybe more. The scarred man hadn't given up. He had tracked them here. Thomas turned to Clara, his voice urgent but steady. "Stay low. Don't move." She shook her head violently. "No, they won't stop until they get me. You don't understand, Thomas. If they take me alive..." He cut her off with a firm glance. "They won't." He stepped outside into the night, revolver ready. The wind carried the sound of whispers, of men closing in. Behind him, Clara's voice trembled one last time. "Please, whatever happens, don't let them strip me of this cloth. Don't let them show the world what I am." Thomas swallowed hard, his finger tightening on the trigger, because now, more than ever, he wanted to know the truth. End of Chapter 3. To be continued in Chapter 4. Do you want me to continue immediately with Chapter 4, approximately 900 words, where the scarred man corners them and Clara's secret begins to surface? Or would you prefer I first sketch the twist and ending of Chapter 5, so you know where the story is headed before I write the rest? You said, continue. ChatGPT said, perfect. Let's raise the stakes in Chapter 4, where the scarred man finally corners them, and Clara's secret begins to break open. Chapter 4. The Curse Revealed. Approximately 900 words. The meadow was alive with shadows. Thomas moved silently along the barn wall, revolver tight in his grip. The moonlight spilled across the tall grass, and there, just beyond the fence, he saw them. 3 men this time. The scarred leader in front, his cruel smile lit by the pale glow of the moon. Behind him, 2 others carried rifles, their boots crunching the earth as they spread out to surround the barn. Thomas ducked back inside, whispering sharply, "Clara, stay down. They're here." Her face drained of color. She pressed herself against the hay, clutching the cloth so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her green eyes glistened with tears, but her voice came out steady enough. "Don't let them see me, Thomas. If they rip this off me, if they show the world, I won't survive it." He crouched beside her, touching her arm lightly. "I won't let them touch you. You got my word." The sound of footsteps grew louder. Then a voice, harsh, mocking, rang out from outside. "Rancher, I know you're in there, and I know you've got her." Thomas froze. The scarred man continued, "She don't belong to you. She don't belong to herself either. She's ours, paid in blood, branded by fate, and I'll have her back before this night is over." Clara whimpered, burying her face in the crook of her arm. "Please," she whispered almost to herself. "Not again." Thomas clenched his jaw. He stood, marched to the broken barn door and shouted back, "You'll never lay a hand on her again." Laughter echoed across the meadow. "Brave words, rancher. But you don't know what you're guarding. That woman's cursed. She'll ruin you like she ruined every man before." Thomas's blood boiled. He fired a warning shot into the air. "One more step, and you'll join the others I left in the dirt." Silence followed. The men outside paused. Then the scarred man's voice cut through like a knife. "Fine. If you won't give her up, we'll burn you out." Thomas's eyes widened. He glanced at Clara. She shook her head frantically. "They'll do it," she whispered. "They'll set the barn on fire, force me out, rip this cloth away." Her words broke as a torch was lit outside. Flames flickered, shadows dancing across the barn wall. Thomas cursed. There was no time. He grabbed Clara's hand. "Come on, we're moving." She stumbled to her feet, clutching the cloth desperately around her body as he pulled her toward the back of the barn. But before they could slip out, a bullet tore through the wood, inches from Thomas's head. The men had already surrounded them. The barn door burst open. The scarred man stepped inside, torch in one hand, revolver in the other. His men followed close behind. The firelight illuminated Clara, her figure trembling beneath the torn cloth. "There she is," the scarred man sneered. "The cursed prize of the frontier. Show him, girl. Show him what you really are." Clara backed away, shaking her head violently. "No, please." Thomas stepped in front of her, revolver raised. "You'll have to go through me first." The scarred man laughed. "Don't be a fool, rancher. You think you're protecting her? Wait until you see what's under that rag. You'll freeze in fear, same as we did. She's poison. She's death wrapped in skin." Clara sobbed, collapsing to her knees. "Stop it. Stop saying that." The scarred man motioned to one of his men. "Pull it off her. Let the rancher see the truth." Thomas fired. The man dropped instantly, the torch rolling across the floor. Flames licked at the hay, smoke curling into the rafters. Chaos erupted. The other outlaw fired back, the bullet grazing Thomas's shoulder. Clara screamed, clutching Thomas's arm as he staggered but held his ground. The scarred man snarled, lunging forward. He grabbed Clara's cloth, yanking hard. The fabric tore slightly at the edge, exposing her bare shoulder, marked not just with scars, but with something else. Thomas froze. It wasn't just bruises. It wasn't just scars. Strange blackened patterns curled across her skin, like fire had kissed her flesh and left a mark no man could explain. The patterns glowed faintly in the torchlight, pulsing like veins of burning coal. Clara cried out, pulling the cloth back desperately, tears streaming down her face. "Don't look at me, please." For a moment, Thomas's breath caught. His body went rigid. The scarred man smirked. "See it? Now you understand. She ain't natural. She's cursed." But then something happened the scarred man didn't expect. Thomas didn't back away. He didn't recoil in horror. He stepped forward. His voice was low, steady, filled with fire. "I don't care what mark she carries. She's still human, and she's still under my protection." The scarred man's smile faltered. "Then you'll die with her." He lunged again. Thomas fired. The shot echoed through the barn. The scarred man stumbled, clutching his chest, eyes wide with shock. He dropped to his knees, torch falling from his grip, and collapsed into the dirt. The last outlaw turned and fled into the night, leaving his leader behind. The barn was filling with smoke now, flames crackling through the hay. Thomas grabbed Clara, pulling her close. "Come on, we're leaving." She clung to him, trembling, her face buried in his chest. "Why didn't you freeze? Why didn't you run like the rest?" Thomas held her tighter, his voice rough but steady. "Because, Clara, you ain't cursed. You're just a woman who's been hurt too much, and I won't let them hurt you again." Her tears fell hot against his skin as the flames roared around them. Together they burst out of the barn into the cool night air, the building collapsing in fire behind them. But even in safety, Thomas knew the truth. This wasn't over, because the scarred man's words still echoed in his mind. "She'll ruin you like she ruined every man before." And Thomas couldn't help but wonder, what if it was true? End of Chapter 4. To be continued in Chapter 5, the final chapter, where the full truth of Clara's past and the meaning of her curse is revealed. Do you want me to write Chapter 5, the finale, approximately 900 to 1,000 words, now, tying everything together with a powerful twist and lesson? Or would you like me to first summarize the planned twist so you can confirm if it's the kind of ending you want? You said, continue. ChatGPT said, excellent. Here comes the final chapter, where Clara's secret is fully revealed. The danger closes in one last time, and the story ends with a twist, plus lesson to leave listeners satisfied. Chapter 5. The Last Secret. Approximately 950 words. The barn was nothing but a heap of fire and smoke when Thomas and Clara stumbled into the meadow. The flames clawed at the night sky, lighting the prairie like dawn come too early. Clara leaned against him, trembling, still clutching the cloth around her scar-marked body. Her breaths came fast, broken, but her eyes, green, glinting with fear and shame, never left his. "You saw it," she whispered. "You saw what's on me. Why didn't you turn away?" Thomas steadied her on her feet, wincing at the pain in his shoulder. "Because scars don't scare me. Fire don't scare me, and neither do you." She shook her head, tears streaking down her dirt-stained cheeks. "No, Thomas. You don't understand. That mark on my skin, it isn't just scars. It's a brand. They put it on me when I was 15. Burned it into my flesh. They said it meant I belonged to them forever, that any man who touched me would suffer." Her voice cracked, breaking like glass. And they were right. Every man who tried to protect me, every man who cared, died. Some from bullets, some from sickness, some by turning on me when they couldn't bear the sight of it anymore. They were ruined, every one of them. That's why they call me cursed. Thomas listened, jaw tight, heart burning hotter than the fire behind them. He reached out, tilting her chin up so she'd meet his gaze. "They were ruined because they were cowards, Clara. Not because of you." Her lips trembled. "You don't know what you're saying. The scarred man was right. If you keep me near, you'll fall too. I don't want your death on my hands." He shook his head. "I've seen enough death. I'm still standing. And I'd rather fall by your side than live knowing I left you to burn." For the first time since he found her, Clara's breath caught, not in fear but in something softer, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, but it didn't last long. The sharp crack of a rifle echoed across the meadow. A bullet kicked up dirt at their feet. Thomas spun, revolver raised. Out of the smoke, another figure emerged. The scarred man. Blood soaked his chest, his shirt torn where Thomas had shot him. But somehow, he was still alive. His face was twisted in rage, his eyes wild with fire. "You think you can take her?" he snarled, raising the rifle with shaking hands. "She'll eat you alive, rancher. Just like the rest. She ain't worth saving." Clara cried out, stepping forward. "Please, don't!" The scarred man sneered. "Beg all you want, girl. You're mine until the grave." The rifle cracked again. Thomas shoved Clara aside, the bullet grazing his ribs. Pain seared through him, but he didn't stop. He raised his revolver, aimed steady despite the blood dripping down his arm, and fired. The scarred man staggered back, the rifle slipping from his grasp. His knees buckled. For a moment, his eyes locked on Clara one last time. "You'll ruin him too," he hissed. Then he collapsed into the dirt, finally still. The meadow went silent, save for the crackle of the burning barn and Clara's ragged breaths. She stared at Thomas, tears brimming. You saved me." He holstered his revolver, wincing as the pain in his ribs caught up with him. "I reckon you saved me too. If I hadn't been there tonight, I'd have nothing to fight for." Clara pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back a sob. Then slowly, she let the cloth slip from her shoulders. Thomas froze, not from fear, not from shame, but from the weight of what he saw. Her body was marked, yes, burned, scarred with cruel brands carved by men who thought they could own her. But beneath those scars was beauty, strength, and a fire that no chain, no whip, no curse could kill. She trembled under his gaze. "Do you see it now? Do you see why they call me cursed?" Thomas stepped closer, lifting her chin once more. His voice was steady, unyielding. "I see a woman they tried to break, a woman they feared because she was stronger than all of them. They called it a curse because they were too small to face what they created. But I don't see a curse, Clara. I see survival." Her tears spilled over, falling freely now. For the first time in years, she didn't pull the cloth back over her body. For the first time, she let someone see her, truly see her. And Thomas didn't turn away. He pulled her close, his voice low in her ear. "You're not cursed. You're mine to protect. And as long as I'm breathing, no man will lay a hand on you again." Clara collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest. And for once, her tears weren't just of sorrow, but of release. The fire behind them burned itself into embers. The night quieted, the wind carrying away the last echoes of gunfire. Thomas tightened his arms around her, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The West was cruel, merciless, and full of men like the scarred outlaw. But it was also a land where people like Clara could rise again. As dawn began to break, Clara whispered softly, almost to herself, Maybe I'm not cursed after all." Thanks for listening, partner. If you like this story, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. More Wild West tales are on the way.